to name my favorite desserts from childhood, and I knew without even thinking about it. They were the desserts that looked as fun and whimsical as they tasted. Petit fours, rainbow cupcakes, sugar cookies with sprinkles, gingerbread men, those little panoramic Easter eggs with the tiny sugared scenes inside. When you bake for kids or with kids, you've really got to get on their level. What's interesting to them? What's doable for them? What will give them a sense of success and fulfillment and accomplishment and still be really fun at the same time? What I love about baking for kids is it really opens up a whole new palette of creative opportunity. You can bring your wildest ideas to the table. Okay, remember these from the 80s? If not, comment below and I'll tell you all about ice cream push-ups. Or if you are a kid watching, hi! Ask your parents and they can tell you. Today we're going to be using these shooter cases to make cake shooters. Mine are in a spring ombre palette, but you can make these in any color you like, even a rainbow. Just divide your batter into 6 pans. Each will be about half the thickness of what you see here. I had a couple of requests for this particular video. I was asked to make something you could serve at a kid's birthday party and also something that kids could make in the kitchen with their parents. What hits the mark in both cases for cake shooters is that they're fun and pretty, but they're also not a perfectionist game. By the very nature of how they are assembled, it's really hard to get them precise and exact, so a little mess, a little imperfection is just part of the process, and that's totally fine. These are also a favorite of my husband, so if you're not a kid and you just really like cake, these are for you too. Before we get started, check the link below to make sure you have everything you need. Just a note, the vendor that I buy these cases from on Amazon doesn't have them all the time. So if you can't find them at that link, I'm sure you can find them with another vendor on Amazon. Whether you are baking for kids, with kids, or you're just a big kid who really likes cake, it's time for a kitchen party. Let's get started. First things first, we're gonna make some cake. Go ahead and preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Once you've got that going, the first thing you'll need is 2 sticks or 1 cup of softened, unsalted butter. You can either soften this by leaving it out on the counter for a while or running it in the microwave for 10 to 15 seconds. You'll toss it in the bowl of a stand mixer, or you can use a handheld mixer too, and go ahead and whip it up on medium speed for about 2 minutes until it gets nice and creamy. With any project you're mixing, especially with butter, you'll want to periodically scrape down the sides of the bowl just to make sure everything's evenly mixed. Next, we'll add a tablespoon of vanilla and 1.5 cups of granulated sugar. Go ahead and whiz that up on medium-high speed for about 4 more minutes until it's soft and airy and lighter in color. Now we'll add 4 eggs, one at a time, mixing between additions. Don't forget to scrape every now and then just to make sure that everything is uniformly incorporated. Add 2 3/4 cups of flour to a sifter with a tablespoon of baking powder and a half teaspoon of salt. Go ahead and sift all of that together into a mixing bowl. Now we're going to take a cup of milk, whole or 2%, either is fine, but I'd steer clear of skim because you do need a little fat in the mix. And alternately add the dry ingredients with the milk. You'll start with 1/3 of the dry ingredients, then add half the milk, then add another third of the dry ingredients, then the other half of the milk, then the last third of the dry ingredients. I know that feels involved, but it's really important that you follow these instructions to ensure that your cake has the right consistency. Don't forget to keep scraping as you go. Once everything has been added, mix only until you don't see any more dry flour, and then go ahead and stop. I'm going to be making 3 color layers for my cake shooters. The next thing I need to do is divide my dough into equal thirds. If you want to make more than 3 colors, just divide it into as many layers as you plan to have, and don't forget to start with a clean bowl and tear out your scale. Very important. Then pour all of your batter in and divide that amount by 3. Then you'll weigh 1/3 of the ingredients into other bowls, leaving you with 3 bowls that have batter in equal amounts. Now's where the fun part really starts. For an ombre look, we're going to dye our cake batter in 3 shades of peach. I I'd highly recommend gel food coloring for this. I'm using a couple of different colors of peach here, but if you have a simpler set of gel colors, you can actually use varying amounts of the same color. Now it's time to prep our pans. We want these cakes to be thin with plenty of surface area, so an 8 or 9 inch round is going to be your best bet. Personally, I only own 2 of these, so my first bake will be 2 layers and then I'll bake the 3rd layer last. To get your pan ready, you'll want to have a circle of parchment the same size as the base of your pan cut and prepared. You'll spray the bottom and sides thoroughly with cooking spray, I just use an olive oil spray, and then toss about a 1/3 cup of flour in the pan and roll it around the bottom of the sides until they adhere to the cooking spray all the way around. You want to make sure and get really good coverage here. Toss the excess in the sink or into your other pan and do the same for the second. Then lay your parchment circle on the base of the pan and pour in your batter. It's not going to be a lot of batter, but don't freak out. We need these layers to be super thin so we can make multiple cakes for each shooter. If you do more colors, it will be even thinner, and that's okay and totally right. Once you have all the batter in the pan, use a spoon to spread it out around the perimeter of the pan, making sure you have an even layer throughout. Give it a couple of taps just to make sure you've got any air bubbles out. Okay, let's just take a second to discuss a major cake hack that for some reason no one is talking about. I know we've all made cakes that are domed and browned on the sides, and we end up in this fretful aftermath of trimming and hoping no one notices. The truth is, most of the time people don't notice. But with cake shooters, you're giving people a clear view, almost a cross-section into the side of your cake. So if you've got wide angles and the cakes are brown on the side, it's really going to affect the overall look and feel of the dessert. Here's a trick that no one ever told you. Wrapping your cake in moisture not only keeps the sides from going brown, but it gives you a flat, even top. Don't believe me? Try this. Pull out a row of paper towels long enough to wrap around the circumference of your whole pan. Then fold it in on itself until it's a narrow strip. Measure a piece of aluminum foil so it's the same length. Run the paper towel under a faucet until it's nice and wet and then wring it out just enough that it's not dripping. Lay it in the tinfoil and fold the tinfoil inward until the paper towel is totally enclosed inside. Wrap the foil around the pan and either secure it with the clasp of your pan or fold it in on itself so it's tight to the pan and won't come off. Repeat the steps above for the other 2 layers and pop them in the oven for 20 minutes or until the tops feel springy to the touch. When the cakes are out of the oven, you'll want to use a knife to loosen up around the edges. Then just pop them out of the pan and remove the parchment paper. You can go ahead and cool these on a cooling rack. See how the cakes are so smooth and flat with no brown spots? For the next part, I recommend having a set of round cookie cutters on hand because you'll need one that fits just inside the cake shooter, and sometimes it takes a couple of tries to find the one that's just right. You'll want to use the one that nestles closest to the edges of the shooter case. Now, you'll want to take all your layers one by one and use the circle cutter to cut as many circles as you have shooter cases for all 3 cakes. I usually do a couple of extras too, just in case one breaks or feels uneven. Once that's done, we'll make our buttercream. We'll be sticking with the same recipe I've used for previous videos. Start with 2 sticks or 1 cup of softened unsalted butter and mix on high speed for 5 minutes, scraping the sides as needed. You'll know it's ready when it's soft and the color lightens. Then add 3 cups of confectioner's sugar, 1 cup at a time, whipping in between until each addition is fully incorporated. Remember to slow down the mixer before you add each cup to prevent a sugar cloud. Then add 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Just a note, sometimes if the sugar is making the butter super dry, I'll add the vanilla between the sugar additions, but this is totally up to you. Once everything is added, whiz it up about 2 to 3 more minutes. When your icing is totally mixed, you'll want to grab 2 piping bags. You'll need 2 different types of tips here, a round tip and a small star tip. Fill each bag with icing in equal amounts. When you're filling the bags, you'll want to open them up and fold the edges over your hand to make sure the icing is going into the lower part of the bag. This will keep it from spilling out the top while you're piping and prevent a big mess. Once you've got your icing inside of the bag, push it down to the bottom and twist the end. Now, you're going to grab a shooter case and go ahead and dust it out with a paintbrush just to make sure it doesn't have any dust or crumbs inside. A paper towel or Kleenex will work here too, but you'll find that once we start dealing with the cake layers, a paintbrush works wonders for getting in the crevices. Again, these never look exactly perfect or uniform, but a helpful tip is once we start filling the shooter case, you do not want to move the plunger up and down because the icing and the crumbs will smear all over the sides. So start with it pulled out all the way and leave it pulled out for the duration of the time you spend working with it. For an ombre, I like to start with the darkest layer and work up to the lightest. For rainbow, you just go in the standard rainbow color order. You can press the first layer down pretty good just to make sure it's even, but once you start using icing, you don't want to press hard on the layers because that can cause smearing as well. Once you have that first layer in, use your paintbrush to clean out any crumbs, and then use your piping bag with the round tip to go ahead and pipe all around the edges in a circle and swirl it in the middle. I like to hold the tip all the way to the plastic while I'm going around the outer edges just to be sure that the icing's in the same place all the way around. Again, you may smear some icing here and it's okay, but if you go too crazy, you'll end up with a slimy film around the shooter case and you don't want that. Go for your second lightest layer next, then add another layer of icing with the round tip, then put in your lightest layer at the top and use your open star tip to finish everything off. To top these, apply some pressure in the middle of the top layer and then create a loop around the outside without stopping the flow of the icing. Toss some sprinkles on top and apply the lid. And voila, a cake shooter. Thanks so much for coming over today and hanging out with me. If you're a baker in training in the kitchen with your parents, I so appreciate you watching. I hope you'll tune in for more kids videos as I do have a plan to make more in the future. If you like the content you're seeing here or other videos you've seen on my channel, please hit like below or subscribe to support the future of Queen Nanas. And I hope you have a great and sweet day. See what I did there?